Hi, Kat.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay. It's
Good.
Friday.
It is. I know. I'm so excited. I'm so
I
excited.
I feel like I'm rediscovering my weekends slowly. I don't know, I feel like I felt in my 20s when you'd have this long expanse to yourself. And I feel like I'm getting that back. And that's quite a glorious thing to behold.
Oh, that is lovely. That is so great. I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
I
And
get
of course, we are recording on a Friday, and you and I have an 8 hour time difference. So, whilst you are bright eyed and bushy tailed, I'm getting ready for weekend hibernation.
Yay. Get-
Am
Are you reading?
I what? Sorry.
Reading this weekend?
Reading.
Yes.
I am reading two books at the moment, one of which I'm sure I'm the last person to the party. I am reading and very much enjoying Bel Canto by Anne.
Oh, by Ann Patchett.
Mhm.
Oh, El Canto is so good.
And then this, I messaged you a couple of weeks ago and said, I swear down that every single book that is arriving in my pathway at the moment is being placed by a higher power.
Yeah, I remember
So
that.
I am reading this book, The
Ooh.
Great Work of Your Life by Stephen Cope, and it is absolutely phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. He is exploring the teachings in the Bhagavad Gita
Uh-huh.
and and narrating how we live our lives.
Oh, that's wonderful. I just finished reading this book, Accidental Saints by Nadia Bowles-Weber.
Okay.
She is one of my favorite pastors. She's a pastor in the Lutheran Church, and it is just so lovely. And then I'm reading, um, I just started a book called Jesus Feminist by Sarah Bessey, and I'm very excited about that. I just finished reading this amazing novel called Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix that my mom and I went and saw Grady speak at a bookstore, and it's lovely. So delightful. So yeah, reading is
Well,
good, Kat. Reading.
reading is good. Reading is soul food. It's a delight and joy to be switched off from digital devices. And in hard copy, so far, nobody can keep track of what we're up to. And that is why I love the idea of going back to analog. So if anyone is listening to this and they want my recommendation for a healthier, more enriching life, go back to analog. And if you are young and listening to this and you aren't quite sure what I am talking about, reach out to us because we can help you
That's
find
right.
activities
Yes.
that bring your soul to life.
Yes. Speaking of bringing our souls to life, one of our decision today is to talk about grief. And uh, I think we've brought grief up a couple of times throughout our conversations. Um, and we decided that it's really important to give grief space and attention because of everything that people are experiencing right now and that's going on in our lives. And um, I'm wondering if you just want to start the conversation talking about the weight of grief.
Mm, mm. The weight of grief. Well, as you introduced the topic, I was thinking about grief and how it shows up in our lives in so many different forms, and part of our inability to address grief is because we don't have enough conversation about the myriad ways in which it shows up and why it shows up. Grief isn't singularly about um, a set of emotions that you experience when somebody or yeah, somebody or a loved animal or whatever, when somebody that you have loved dies, it you grieve when things that have held value to you come to an end. So you might grieve for the loss of a job, or the loss of a relationship, or the loss of a connection to a place, or goodness, lots of different ways in which grief can strike. And one of the things that I find myself reflecting on a lot is that we are terrible, terrible, terrible in the global north as spirituality has declined in an organized form in the last 30 or 40 years. We've just become increasingly bad at talking about grief. But as I think we've talked about in our conversations, um, it's the natural accompaniment to love, isn't it? Because if you love and then you lose the object of your love for whatever reason, you will grieve.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really resonating with me about what you're saying is that anything can trigger that grief response, right? So
Mhm.
anything that happens can be something that allows us to experience grief, any loss that we're connected to. And I think that you know, this idea of connecting to spirit is something that's so important, like connecting to our soul and figuring out what our soul is craving. And one of the things that I have um, been thinking a lot about is that this idea of spirituality that you just brought up. I was actually at a concert last night. A Native American trumpet player named Quinn Carson. He's so beautiful. Um, he was talking about how we talk a lot in the Native American and indigenous world about the before times and then the after colonization, right? And Quinn was talking about how he found these songs, these old songs, these recordings, and how the drums were put away. So drums were banned when the white settlers came. They banned the drums, and if you listen to native singing in particular, sometimes you'll hear bells ringing because they used bells to replace the drum beat, and because that's all that was accessible at the time. And uh, I think that it's so, and music and songs are directly related to the soul, right? It's like why when
Yeah.
we listen to really good music, we feel deep, deep emotion, right? And that's why grief songs are so important and lamenting is so important. I've been thinking a lot about lamenting and lamentation, which is the practice of experiencing deep grief and processing through lament and sorrow. And I think there's something so powerful about us thinking about our soul right now. I mean, I think especially for me and for other people I know in the United States, I feel like so much about what we're experiencing right now when we're recording this in March of 2025, right? Like, is this deep grief and sorrow and realization that we have no control.
Yeah.
And I think for so many people, they are really starting to realize that there is literally no such thing as control. It doesn't exist. and it's
Yeah.
meant to exist. And I think that's what ancient singing and ancient um, songs can teach us, is that music is about the experience of living, which includes grief.
Yeah. 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 And there is a lot to be sorrowful for right now. And to experience sorrow and to experience grief in a full-blooded and open-hearted way allows us to process the experience of loss and endings at a cellular level. And I think various things through my lived experience. I think that grief and loss never leaves you. Once it has landed, it never leaves you. It does change shape and you learn to live around it. And that is a gift. Grief and loss are gifts because they teach us what is valuable in life.
Mhm.
Um, and as we go through the process of processing grief and loss, we eventually make space for new beginnings. And you can't have new beginnings without endings,
Yeah.
because that is the circular nature of life. So fundamentally, I think what I'm saying is, in the 21st century, in the end game of extreme capitalism, we have been taught that everything is knowable and everything is codifiable into some kind of playbook. And this comes back to the conversation that we've had on previous podcasts about the illusion of perfectionism and normality and all of those things. And of course, there is no playbook. That's proper Wizard of Oz make-believe. And those who are upholding in Western endgame capitalism at the moment the idea that there are rules and playbooks and everything is knowable are absolutely batshit delusional, because all they are doing is clunking together artificial intelligence. All you're actually doing is jamming together everything that you know right now. And you may create some new learnings, but that very much depends on the mental dexterity of the people that can extrapolate knowledge out of old learnings. But if you're just jamming it together to make up some kind of word stew or knowledge stew, what are you actually creating? Einstein had it down pat. He talked about the fact that we know what we know, but what we know is so much less than what we don't know. And that is the mystery and magic of life. And I know I'm going off on a bit of a ramble there, but my point being, nothing is stable, nothing is infinite. Life is circular, not linear. And endings make way for new beginnings, as they always have and as they always will. Nothing lasts forever. We might be going into a dark, dark time right now. Maybe this dark time is needed in order that we are forced by dictators and oligarchs to become a little bit less greedy.
Oh, I
Maybe,
think it's 100% necessary. Like,
yeah, right. Maybe
and
that
I
is
think of,
nature kind of bite back.
yeah, I think of life as a spiral. Like you know, and I don't remember if we've talked about this before, but all the ancient rock drawings always have a spiral on it. And I even have a spiral tattooed on my wrist, right? The life, death, rebirth spiral. Because I feel like over and over throughout our lives, we go through these moments of death where what we thought we knew, what we thought we understand, what we think we have a hold on dies so that we can be born again in another cycle on the spiral. And I I feel like while there is so much darkness, the thing I love about life is learning that without darkness there is no light, and without light there is no darkness. And I think I really have noticed just recently and right now that there are so many opportunities in just this grief that I'm experiencing, but also the grief that I'm watching my husband experience, for example, because the job he's worked towards for so long was rescinded without his control. And I think about just these experiences of people also reaching out and coming together and connecting in this darkness. And those are the moments of light that I try to gravitate towards so that the darkness doesn't feel so consuming. Um, Not that I'm trying to bypass the feelings of sorrow and rage and sadness, but to remember that in these cycles of life for since humanity began, there has always been darkness and light in our cycles of life. And if we are willing to give ourselves over to the idea of life, death, and rebirth, then we give ourselves the space to recognize that birth is tough, man. like like going through that birth canal can be really, really traumatic and intense, right?
Yeah.
And and we're doing it as adult humans sometimes, we're going through these cycles of birth again. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about the spring is it creates such incredible metaphors for redemption and growth and new beginnings, and thinking about how, because that's the cycle that we're in right now. We just had spring equinox yesterday, and thinking about how each time the seasons change, but particularly spring gives us this really incredible opportunity to see what's growing for us, what's coming up out of the soil for us, and what did we have to compost and break down and move away in order for us to grow stronger and bigger. I think it just gives us such an incredible metaphor for addressing the weight of grief and the weight of our lived experiences, because our lives are heavy. They're not always buoyant, that there are moments of, I mean, like I was being ridiculous this morning and it's totally making myself laugh because I was singing New York, New York at the top of my lungs and just being ridiculously silly. And that's one of the other things I've noticed, Kat. Like I will find moments where I'm like, I feel like a tension ball, like I'm just super wound
Mhm.
up. And then all of a sudden I'll just break out in song and I'm like, okay. Laughing at myself is one of the ways that I have found allows me to push aside, not push aside, but like open another door or like a portal to letting the grief just kind of move through. Not like shoving it aside. I don't like that metaphor, but really thinking about how am I just walking through this big heavy feeling.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that this isn't a um English anomaly, but I have found consistently that in the face of loss, like death, dark humor is brilliant. Dark humor is just the funniest thing. One of my girlfriends um told me a story before my mother died, and her father had died 5 years previously. And it's not even funny. This isn't, I'm not sure that this is a funny story, but I laughed and laughed when she told me. that after her father died, and she was in her very early 20s, somebody came up to her and said, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And she said, without thinking, "It's okay, you didn't do it." And so And so I remembered that story. Obviously, I laughed and laughed when she told me. I remembered it. And when my time came, somebody that I knew reasonably well in my professional life, but not well enough to say what came next, phoned me up and he said, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And I said, "It's okay, Mike, you didn't do it." And it's just the, you have to find, you have to find whatever it is that lightens the moment.
Yeah, every good funeral has laughter in it.
Mm.
It just does.
Yeah.
And I think that I've said that a lot, like I have had so many people come to me and be like, "What do we do?" And I'm like, you have to remember that through great upheavals, great wars, great battles, through incarceration and pain and suffering, there is always connection.
Yeah.
People are always connecting with each other. And I think that is what we do. We connect with each other. We collect around each other. We ask each other, what do you need? Because
Yeah.
what I need right now is not what I needed 2 weeks ago. That changes too, like what we need in this moment. And I think there's something, one of the ways to really go through grief is to acknowledge presence, to be very present in the moment and to acknowledge presence, like just be so firmly rooted in the moment. Because what you need from one second to the next might change. But
Yeah.
if you're trying to avoid grief, grief always will show itself until you deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it will take years. You have to deal.
Sometimes it takes lifetimes. My dad committed suicide when I was 6, and I still grieve my dad all the time. I don't I truly believe I will grieve my father's death to the end of my life because how I grieved when I was 6 was not how I grieved when I was a teenager, was not how I grieved the first time I got married and he wasn't there. There've been many marriages. But like, I grieve my father not being here often. I've thought about him last night when I was listening to Quinn Carson talk about our music, native music, the
Mm.
thought, God, my dad just almost totally took that away with his death. And I miss my dad all the time. And he was a complicated man. Like, you know, I don't know that he would have been the best dad on the planet, but like, I think it would have been really cool to share my life with him, even if it would have been difficult and complicated. But I didn't. And so I also really want to give people permission, like, to grieve the job loss, grieve the loss of pets and children and family members and friends. Like, I have friends that I still think about that I'm not friends with anymore.
Yeah.
Especially adult friends, that those relationships are gone and realizing that they serve such an incredible purpose in my life, but they can't exist anymore. There's no coexistence to it.
Well, and there's something about that as well, where you also potentially grieve the poor ending that a relationship underwent. Like, I have somebody that I was incredibly close to for years. She was a really good friend. She was also very unwell mentally. And for the most part of our friendship, that was just a big elephant in the room that wasn't discussed because we lacked the language to talk about it and the permission to talk about it. But eventually, her anger issues just got so bad that I had to remove myself from her life. And I couldn't at the time think of a way that I could do that elegantly without another massive attack on myself. And so I slipped away. I ghosted her. I just stopped communicating, and I am ashamed about that every single day because I should have done better in that
I don't think so.
episode.
I'm gonna,
And but what I
you
do
do what
think,
you can at that
what I do
exact moment.
no, and what I do think is I've learned a lot from that, so I wouldn't let that happen. You know, I would like to think that I wouldn't behave in that way twice. It was a very difficult circumstance. And all of these things teach us something. But I think, you know, the endings aren't straightforward, are they? They're not supposed to be straightforward. And actually, you know, if you are minded to sit in the moment, sit in the discomfort, look at what the wider, you know, is there a lesson? Is there a lesson here for me? Is there something that I can build on to move forward?
And don't you
You
think that's I think that's the beauty of life. I've been thinking a lot about grace and mercy, and having grace and mercy for myself, just to give myself mercy that throughout my lifetime, I have made many catastrophic mistakes. And also, I've made decisions in those moments where I did what I could to keep myself safe. And I think if we are willing to have more mercy for ourselves and our feelings, that it gives us, that's the light, that's the lightening of the weight of.
yeah. I mean, look, as you were saying that, what was going through my mind was I did the best that I could at the time. And then this parallel voice just hit me and it said, right, of course, because who goes out there and does the worst that they could for themselves at the time? Oh, I went and did the worst thing for myself at the time. Who does that? We
No,
do what we
I
do,
think that
you know?
it's like, I think that is the holy mystery of creation, right? The holy mystery of living is to allow ourselves to release judgment and move into a curious space where we're like, I wonder why I handled that way, or I wonder why I'm reacting this way, or I wonder why this is happening to me right now.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden, we're in this totally different space where we can go, well, perhaps this is happening so I can deal with some shit I've been trying to avoid dealing with for, I
yeah,
don't know, however long, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, look, you know, my personal situation. I've not talked about this on air before. I don't really feel a requirement to conceal anymore, but you know that I am working through the process of the end of a marriage. And somebody said to me in the last month, which I thought was just fascinating. Um, so I have been married, well, I had been married for 22 years when my husband announced the end of the marriage, and I am in the process of unmarrying at the moment, and it is taking longer than I would like, but there we go. And somebody said to me the other day, and I just thought, wow, I'd not thought about it that way. They said, 22 years of marriage is not a failed marriage.
No, nope. That's a good run. That's a lot
And
longer than my marriages.
and also, you know, I'm
Mhm.
not the same person that I was 23 years ago.
Mm-mm.
I'm completely different. Like I am everything that I am today. There are some elements of congruence and there are vast, vast areas of expansion.
Yeah.
So maybe a few strands of consistency and everything else is different. And that is the nature of life, right? So holding on to things that we cannot possibly hold on to. is very dangerous. Because as you say, if we don't move on and process, these things will come back and bite us down the line.
Right.
And I
So,
do just a footnote, I cannot even begin to imagine what it must be like to live in your country at the moment. And I mean, I literally cannot, but I also think, and I'm well aware that a good percentage of your fellow countrymen may think that what is going on is a joy to behold, but in equal measure, there will be many, many, many others who are beyond frightened at the moment. And it is okay to feel that way. I think what
I
we have
think,
to do is reach out and find our people so that we can grieve in community and not do it in isolation.
and I keep going back to the words of John Lewis and Martin Luther King and um, the idea of nonviolence,
Yeah,
love, love, loving your enemy, and which is really hard to do. But I keep thinking about like John Lewis, who, when they marched on the bridge in Selma, they were linked arm in arm. So they were linked arm in arm in this wall, knowing that they were walking into a beating.
yeah,
And John Lewis's skull was cracked,
yeah,
and he carried those scars his whole entire life.
yeah.
Martin Luther King was killed, but they never, ever, ever raised a fist to fight back.
Hmm.
And there is something incredibly powerful in that knowledge.
Hmm.
And, and I that is one of the things that's giving me life right now. And I'm really more and more, I'm covered in the chills, more and more connecting to love and
Yeah,
compassion and grace and mercy. Um, I think is what's going to pull us through.
yeah,
Yes, there's going to be suffering and death and violence, and also there are going to be moments for us to rise in a way that we've never done so before, I think, as a country. And I'm
yeah.
curious, that's what's giving me life right now. So I'm curious, what is giving you life right now?
Hmm. Well, Melissa, this one might twist your melons a little bit. Um, I continue to walk in the woods every morning, and as the mornings get lighter and the days get a little bit clearer, and obviously the leaves haven't sprung forth on the trees yet, but I go into the woods and I listen to the bird song. But in particular, I listen because in our woods we have woodpeckers. And I spend my time listening for the woodpecker. And I was saying to a neighbour of mine yesterday that this week I got closer and closer and closer to the sound of the woodpecker, and I kept looking up at the trees, thinking, why can I not see the woodpecker? And um, she then said to me, well, it's only the oh. So there are spotted woodpeckers, and then there are green woodpeckers where I live. And she said, well, it's only the spotted woodpeckers that make that noise. And I said, well, what do the green ones do? And she said, well, they don't peck. And I said, well, why are they called woodpeckers then? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, we need to write to the people and make this stuff up. Because how can you have a woodpecker that doesn't peck wood? That is what I'm going to leave you with today, because I'm like, what is that even about?
That's amazing. There's
I'm sorry that that's like really out there,
there's
but
so
I'm
many
like,
things. As a bird girl, there's so many things I love about that. It's just really good.
I'm just very confused.
If you could distill down the, I mean, we started all of these conversations because we wanted to talk about love.
Yeah.
Um, if you could distill down what this experience has been like for you, these conversations, what the gift has been for you, what is it?
Well, I just want to say I hope that that doesn't mean that we're coming to the end of it, because every
No,
conversation.
for sure not. But I'm just curious, up to this time.
So creating a space to talk about the things that matter, and what does matter? What does matter in the end? Did I live the best life that I could live with the means that were available to me? And I don't mean did I get to drive, well, name your car. Did I get to go on the holidays to name your destination? Did I live the truest life in alignment and congruence with myself? And did I love to my full capacity? And did I find my truth? Those are the things. And I think it is also interesting to note that the people that seem hell-bent on unraveling stability at the moment do not possess any of those attributes. They are empty, void souls. So when I think about these conversations, I think about them as getting deeper into the very essence of what matters. And I walk away uplifted. I don't necessarily feel that I'm further forward, but I do find some comfort in talking about the things that we have very little space for talking about in modern society.
I think about those people, and I don't think about them as void souls. I think about them as terrified people. I
That's
feel one of,
very, very benevolent. Yeah.
one of the things I'm really noticing is just how deeply afraid and unable people are to talk about lifetimes of terror.
Yeah.
And just how fear can cause people to do very cruel and mean things.
Yeah.
And as I think about these conversations, which I have loved so much, I just have looked forward to them so much. One of the things that I really reflect on is how I actually wrote this down. Um, I wrote, I'm blessed by all who know and love me, and I'm blessed to love so many.
Yeah.
I,
Love that.
I think it is so remarkable to, and I go back to the magic of this often. The fact that you and I met on a dumb screen and in this group that neither of us are a part of, and somehow came together in this divine connection. And then the fact that you and I were able to be in person together.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have carried on these conversations is that is the magic of life. Like that is
Yeah.
divinity. That to me is the divinity of connection.
Mm-hmm. I
And
love that.
I think it is a blessing that we get to share these conversations with the world. And it
Yeah.
makes me so, so happy.
Well, I love them too. It's like soul food.
It is. It's yummy. It's yummy.
Let's have another one then, please.
Yes. I love you,
I will see you soon, my dear friend.
Kat.